For years, I thought I'd hung up my old life like a dusty coat. Turns out, some coats just need a good shake, and they're ready for another war. And my son, bless his ambitious, hollow heart, just shook mine. My name is Arthur Sterling, though most folks around here just call me Art. Or, if they're feeling particularly familiar, Old Man Sterling, which I don't mind. I live in a quiet, tree-lined suburb just outside of Philadelphia, a place where the biggest scandal is usually a missed recycling pickup or a rogue squirrel in Mrs. Henderson's bird feeder. My house, a modest two-story colonial built sometime in the 50s, perfectly blends into the background. Paint's a little faded, porch swing sags just right, a patch of lawn that's more clover than grass. Nothing about it screams history. Nothing about me screams history, either if you just glance. I usually start my mornings with a cup of black coffee. None of that fancy latte foam for me. Out on the porch, listening to the morning news and the chirping birds. This morning, though, the chirping was drowned out by the whine of a supercar engine, the kind that makes you think a wasp nest just materialized in your driveway. A sleek, obsidian Porsche Taycan, silent as a shark until it idled, pulled up, its expensive tires crunching gravel on my perfectly imperfect driveway. Rick, my son, he stepped out, all-tailored Italian suit, silk tie, and a watch that probably cost more than my entire house. He moves with an artificial grace, like a dancer who's learned the steps but never felt the music. His smile, when he offered it, was a practiced, brilliant flash of white devoid of warmth. The kind of smile you learn in business school, not at your mother's knee. Dad, he said, his voice a little too loud, a little too confident for 7:30 in the morning. He didn't wait for me to answer, just waved a dismissive hand at my project. The reason I spend most of my free hours covered in grease and rust. Parked in the garage, half disassembled but already showing the promise of its former glory, was my 1972 Ford F-100. A beast of a truck, sky blue paint faded by decades of sun and rain, but with an engine that, even now, with half its guts exposed, had more heart than most people I knew. It wasn't just a truck. It was Evelyn's truck. My wife's. Her pride and joy. And it was, in its own silent way, the last key to a past I'd spent 40 years trying to forget. Or, more accurately, to bury so deep no one would ever find it. Still messing with that old thing, huh? Rick's tone was light, but there was an edge of condescension, a sneer barely masked. He kicked idly at a loose stone near the garage door, his expensive leather shoe glinting. Thought you'd have that museum piece done by now. Or sold it for scrap. Make some space for something useful. I took a slow sip of my coffee. The aroma, rich and dark, was a comfort. I let his words hang in the air, a familiar pattern, a song I'd heard 1,000 times since he made his first million. He saw an old truck. I saw a memory. He saw rust. I saw resilience. And hidden deep within its frame, in a compartment I'd crafted myself, a waterproof box contained documents, a coded journal, and a unique, ancient coin. A physical tether to a life he couldn't even begin to imagine. It'll be done when it's done, Rick, I finally replied, my voice calm, steady, betraying none of the steel beneath. It's a trick I learned a long time ago. Silence is a weapon. And a calm smile, the kind my old construction crews knew meant someone was about to learn a very expensive lesson, is a deterrent. He missed it, of course. Always did. He didn't notice the way my eyes, though crinkled at the corners from years of squinting at blueprints and distant horizons, still missed nothing. Didn't notice the calluses on my hands, which looked like they came from gripping wrenches, but had once held much more dangerous things with equal precision. He didn't see the man who had lived a dozen lives before settling into this quiet one. He only saw Dad, the guy who hadn't climbed the corporate ladder, the relic, the slightly embarrassing father who still lived in a house Rick considered beneath him. Right? He sighed, clearly impatient. He checked his watch, a Patek Philippe, I think, the one he'd gotten himself for landing that big tech IPO. Look, Dad, I didn't come all the way out here to talk about your hobby. We need to talk about dinner tonight. And about the house. That's when I felt the first tremor, a faint, almost imperceptible shift in the air. The kind you learn to notice when your life depends on sensing the unseen. Rick rarely came out here just for dinner, and never without an agenda. He was always moving, always scheming, always reaching for more. I just never expected him to reach for this. My eyes drifted from his sleek car to my old F-100, then back to my son, standing there, oblivious to the fact that his casual disregard was about to wake a sleeping giant. The coat, indeed, had just been shaken, and the war was about to begin. Dinner, I repeated, my voice even flatter than before. I already knew what this was about. Rick never just came for dinner. Dinner was a prop, a stage for whatever grand announcement or demand he was about to make. My old habits kicked in, the ones forged in places far less comfortable than a quiet suburban porch. My mind started cataloging, assessing, looking for weak points, anticipating the attack. It was like a rusty old engine sputtering to life, but once it caught, it purred with lethal efficiency. Yes, dinner, he said, waving his hand as if dismissing my slowness. With Melanie. You remember Melanie, don't you? From a country club. Of course, I remembered Melanie. A woman who looked like she'd been airbrushed straight out of a luxury magazine, with a laugh like wind chimes, pretty, but ultimately empty. She was Rick's latest and arguably most expensive accessory. Anyway, he continued, not waiting for my affirmation, she's very particular about ambience. And well, this place... He gestured vaguely at my house. The house he grew up in, the house I built with my own hands, brick by painful brick, after Evelyn and I scraped together every last dime. It's a little lived in. You know, a pause, a beat. That's how they do it. Drop the hint. Let it hang there like a ripe piece of fruit, waiting for you to pick it. I didn't pick it. I just watched him, my coffee growing cold in my hand, the steam dissipating into the crisp morning air. So, he pressed, taking my silence as an invitation to elaborate. Melanie and I were thinking, since we're getting serious, and you're, not really using all the space. He looked around my small, perfectly adequate yard, as if it were a sprawling and used estate. We thought it would be perfect for us. We could renovate, put in a modern kitchen, maybe a pool in the back. And you, Dad, you could move into that nice retirement community we looked at last year. Or maybe a condo. Something smaller, more manageable. He actually smiled as he said it. A dazzling, empty smile. It wasn't just the words. It was the absolute, unshakable confidence in his voice. The way he presented it as a benevolent offer, a gift. Like he was doing me a favor by kicking me out of my home. The sheer audacity. My blood didn't boil, it just thickened. Slowed. It was the same feeling I used to get when I saw a carefully laid trap closing around an innocent, or when a back-alley deal was about to turn ugly. A cold, calculating calm settled over me. He'd crossed a line, one he didn't even know existed. My house, I said, my voice barely a whisper, but it cut through the morning air like broken glass. My truck, my life. Rick laughed, a short, dismissive bark. Come on, Dad. Don't be dramatic. It's just a house. And that junk heap, you can't even drive it yet. Look, I need a car for a few days. My Tesla's in the shop. Some glitch with the autonomous driving, imagine that. Melanie wants to go antiquing in Lancaster tomorrow, and my other cars are too conspicuous or not practical enough. I figured I'd take the F-100. It's got that rustic charm she loves. Just for the weekend. And it'll give you a push to get it finished, right? He didn't even ask. He told me. The subtle arrogance was a signature of his generation, born into comfort, believing everything was theirs for the taking. But there was nothing subtle about this. No, I said, my voice hardening. You can't take the truck. Rick stopped smiling. The perfect facade cracked just a bit, revealing the petulant, entitled boy underneath. What do you mean, no? It's just an old truck, Dad. I'll bring it back in perfect condition. Probably even get it detailed for you. It's not just an old truck, Rick, I explained patiently, as if talking to a child who didn't understand. It was your mother's, and it's not finished. More importantly, it holds something important to me, something I can't risk losing. I didn't elaborate. I didn't need to. He wouldn't understand. He rarely understood anything that wasn't immediately quantifiable in dollars and cents. His face contorted, a flash of genuine anger replacing the manufactured charm. You always do this, Dad. Always making things difficult. You think I don't know what you're doing? You're trying to remind me how poor you are, how much I owe you, how you built everything from nothing. Well, guess what, Dad? I built my own empire. I don't need your sentimental junk or your guilt trips. His voice rose, cracking with frustration. He took a step towards me, his expensive shoes crunching the gravel louder now. His hands balled into fists, and for a split second, I saw a flicker of the wildness that Evelyn used to call his temper, a trait he clearly inherited from some distant ancestor, certainly not from me. Just give me the keys, old man, he snarled, his eyes narrowed, losing all pretense of civility. Now, I looked him straight in the eye. Rick, you lay one hand on that truck, or on me, and you will regret it for the rest of your life. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise, spoken with the quiet certainty of a man who knew the precise weight of his words. He must have seen something in my eyes then, a brief flash of the old Art Sterling, the one he probably vaguely remembered from his earliest childhood, before I chose to fade into the background. For a second, he hesitated. That second, that tiny flicker of recognition, was quickly drowned out by his own pride and fury. He lunged, not like a trained fighter, but like a spoiled child having a tantrum. He grabbed my arm, surprisingly strong, trying to snatch the keys to the F-100 which, in my absent-mindedness, I still held. I sidestepped, letting his momentum carry him past me, twisting his arm just enough to make him stumble without breaking anything. Old habits. He swung wildly, a clumsy punch aimed at my head. I ducked, feeling the whoosh of air as his fist whistled past my ear. You really want to do this, son? I asked, my voice still unervingly calm, even as the adrenaline hummed through my veins. He didn't answer. He just kept coming, a flurry of poorly aimed punches and kicks. He wasn't trying to hurt me seriously, not really. He was trying to dominate, to show me who was boss, to take what he wanted. But he wasn't prepared for the ghost in the room. He wasn't prepared for the fact that I'd spent years in environments where losing a fight meant losing everything. I didn't hit him back. I didn't need to. My goal wasn't to hurt him, but to end this foolishness quickly and decisively. I blocked, dodged, parried. His frustration grew with each missed strike. Finally, as he overextended on a clumsy jab, I moved in, wrapped my arm around his, and used his own momentum, combined with a quick pivot and a low sweep, to send him sprawling onto the gravel. He landed hard, grunting, his expensive suit now dusted with dirt and a small tear blooming at the knee of his trousers. His perfectly coiffed hair was mussed, his face a mask of shock and outrage. He lay there for a moment, stunned, looking up at me, his father standing over him, completely unharmed. Get up, Rick, I said, extending a hand to him. It wasn't an offer of help. It was a command. This is beneath us. He slapped my hand away, scrambling to his feet, eyes blazing with a hatred I'd never seen directed at me before. You old bastard, he spat, wiping a trickle of blood from his lip where it must have caught on the gravel. You'll regret this. You hear me? You think this is over? It's just beginning. He straightened his tie, smoothed his suit, trying to regain some semblance of dignity. His chest heaved. Fina, keep your precious junk heap. But you know what? Melanie is still coming to dinner tonight, and I want the house empty. You understand? Empty. I'll be back at 6. You could go stay at a hotel or with one of your friends. Just be gone, and don't bother coming back until I tell you to. This house is mine now. You just sealed your fate, old man. You and your ridiculous truck. He didn't wait for a reply. He got back into his Porsche, the door closing with a soft, expensive thud. The engine roared, spitting gravel as he reversed, then peeled out of my driveway, leaving a faint scent of burnt rubber and expensive gasoline hanging in the air. I stood there, watching the dust settle, the chirping of the birds slowly returning to fill the sudden void. My arm ached slightly where he grabbed it, but it was a dull throb, a minor detail. What resonated more deeply was the chilling certainty in his voice. This house is mine now. He thought he was casting me out, an inconvenient relic. He thought he was taking my home, my last vestige of a quiet life. He thought he had won. He never considered that by attacking my home, by laying a hand on me, by threatening Evelyn's truck. He had, in fact, opened a door he should have kept firmly shut, a door to a past he didn't know existed, a past that held secrets powerful enough to unravel his entire, carefully constructed world. He just sealed his fate with those arrogant words, much like the man in the story I once heard, whose daughter's fiancé learned a very expensive lesson. My son was about to learn one too, an even more profound one. I walked slowly towards the F-100, its faded blue paint gleaming faintly in the morning sun. I opened the driver's side door, reached under the seat, and with a practiced flick, disengaged the hidden latch. The small, waterproof compartment clicked open. Inside, nestled amongst old maps and a compass, was a worn leather-bound journal, its pages filled with my meticulous, coded script. And beneath it, carefully wrapped in oilskin, was the coin, a relic of a different time, a different life. The world thought Arthur Sterling was just a retired contractor, a quiet widower living out his days puttering with an old truck. They had no idea who Arthur Sterling used to be. And my son, in his boundless arrogance, was about to find out. The sleeping giant was awake, and he was very, very angry. The quiet click of the hidden compartment closing echoed in the silence of the garage. I traced the faded pane of the F-100's fender with my fingertips, a ghost of Evelyn's touch lingering there. My son's words, "This house is mine now," replayed in my head, a jarring chord in the otherwise harmonious symphony of my morning. My house, my sanctuary, the place where I had, for 40 years, meticulously constructed a new identity, brick by brick, lie by lie. "Empty by 6, he'd said. "Go stay at a hotel." The arrogance was breathtaking. He had no idea what he was asking. He had no idea what he was actually doing. You know what's funny about rich people, especially the self-made ones like Rick? They never see the trap until it's too late. They confuse their material success with an understanding of how the world really works. They believe money can buy anything, fix anything, intimidate anyone. They forget that some things aren't for sale, and some people can't be bought or broken. I didn't rush. I never rushed. Haste leads to mistakes, and mistakes in my old line of work led to permanent consequences. I went back inside, poured myself another cup of coffee. The cold one could wait, and settled back into my porch chair. The sun was higher now, casting long shadows across the lawn. The birds were still chirping, oblivious to the shift in the tectonic plates beneath our feet. First, assessment. Rick thought he had leverage. He saw my modest home, my seemingly simple life, and assumed I was vulnerable, easily pushed aside. He saw his wealth, his influence, and believed he held all the cards. But he was wrong, spectacularly wrong. My leverage? It wasn't money. It was knowledge. It was history. It was the careful, deliberate dismantling of a carefully constructed facade, not just mine, but his, and Evelyn's, and perhaps, if I was forced, even his mother's. The thought brought a sharp pang to my chest. Evelyn, always Evelyn. She had been the reason I built this new life. She would also be the reason I would now dismantle it. I pulled out my phone, a simple flip phone, no fancy apps, no tracking, just calls and texts. My contacts list was sparse. My lawyer, a couple of old friends from the construction business, and one name I hadn't touched in years, Ghost. That wasn't his real name, of course. His real name was irrelevant. What was relevant was his expertise. I dial my lawyer, a meticulous, quietly brilliant man named David Miller. David was the kind of lawyer who wore tweed jackets and smelled faintly of old books and pipe tobacco. He specialized in estate law, quiet negotiations, and making problems disappear without fanfare. He also understood, implicitly, that I was not merely a retired contractor. He had handled Evelyn's estate, and he had seen enough of my financial statements, carefully constructed to appear legitimate, to know there were depths he shouldn't probe. "David," I said, when he answered, his voice a little gruff, already in his office. "Arthur Sterling here. I have a rather pressing legal matter." "Arthur? Good morning. What can I do for you?" He sounded surprised. I rarely called him directly, preferring email for anything routine. "My son, Richard Sterling, paid me a visit this morning," I began, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "He informed me that he intends to take possession of my home, effective tonight." and that he intends to physically remove me from the premises, using force if necessary. I omitted the part where he actually did use force for now. No need to muddy the waters with personal details. Let the legal framework do its work. A beat of silence on the other end. David was intelligent enough to grasp the implications immediately. Take possession? Arthur, that's highly illegal. He has no claim to your property. Precisely, I affirmed. However, he seems to believe he does. He also believes he has the right to remove personal property, specifically my 1972 Ford F-100 pickup truck, without my permission. And he made certain threats regarding my continued residence here. Threats? Physical threats. David's voice sharpened, losing its sleepy morning tone. Let's just say he demonstrated a certain lack of restraint. I understated. He expects me to vacate the premises by 6 p.m. today. He will be returning at that time with his fiancée to take over. David sighed, a sound of weary exasperation. Arthur, I'm going to draft a cease and desist order immediately, and a temporary restraining order. I'll have it served on him at his office or wherever he is within the hour. We'll also notify the local police. Any attempt to enter your property or remove you will result in immediate arrest for trespassing and assault. Excellent, David. Thank you. I appreciate your promptness. Of course, Arthur. This is an egregious overstep. Is there anything else? I paused, considering. Just one more thing, David. Should anything untoward happen to me or to my property, I want you to immediately open the sealed instructions I left with you a decade ago. The ones marked for extreme circumstances only. Another, longer silence. David knew what those instructions were. They were my contingency plan, my fail-safe, the truth about Arthur Sterling, carefully documented and encrypted to be released only if I couldn't protect myself or my legacy. It was my dead man switch. Understood, Arthur, he said, his voice now laced with a new gravity. I'll get on this immediately. And please, be careful. Always, David, I replied, and hung up. The first domino was falling. Rick, in his haste, was setting himself up for a very public, very humiliating fall. But that was just the beginning. The legal maneuvering was a shield. The real game, the deeper game, will be played on a different field entirely. My gaze drifted back to the F-100. That truck, Evelyn's truck. It wasn't just sentimentality. It was a repository, a rolling safe deposit box. Inside that hidden compartment, along with the journal and the coin, were copies of old, obscure documents, birth certificates, property deeds, shell company formations, bank transfers, all tied to a name and a past that Rick knew nothing about. A past that Evelyn had carefully cultivated, not for herself, but for her son. A past that, if revealed, would shatter his perception of his mother, his inheritance, and his entire identity. Evelyn was not who she seemed, and neither, by extension, was Rick. And that coin, that small, unassuming piece of metal, was the key to a truth so shocking it could bring down empires. Or at least, one very arrogant son's empire. I spent the next few hours working on the truck, my hands mechanically turning wrenches, my mind racing. I wasn't just fixing a motor, I was building a case. Every bolt tightened, every wire connected, was a step towards activating the true power of that vehicle. The power not of an engine, but of a narrative. Around noon, my phone rang. It was David. Arthur, the TRO and cease and desist were served to Richard at his office less than 20 minutes ago. The police have been notified and will be patrolling your street. Any attempt he makes to enter your property will be met with law enforcement. Excellent, David. How did he react? David chuckled, a dry, rustling sound. The assistant who served him said he went pale as chalk and then turned purple. Apparently, he threw his coffee mug against the wall. He also made a rather colorful remark about you. Said you were nothing but a manipulative old fool. Sound about right. I mused. Thank you, David. Keep me informed. Pale as chalk. That meant he finally understood the gravity of his actions, or at least the immediate legal consequences. But he still didn't understand the true gravity. Not yet. He still thought this was about a house and a truck. He still thought I was just Dad, the guy who couldn't stand up to him. He was about to discover that dad was a title, yes, but also a carefully constructed disguise. A mask worn for decades. I wiped grease from my hand with a rag, a ghost of a smile playing on my lips. My son had come to take my home. Instead, he had just invited me to dismantle his. And with Evelyn's F-100 as my silent accomplice, I was more than ready. The game was on, and it was going to be a very expensive lesson indeed. The scent of stale coffee and burnt arrogance lingered in the air, a faint reminder of Rick's morning visit. David's call had confirmed Rick's reaction, pale as chalk, then turned purple. The picture was vivid, a mental snapshot of my son's carefully curated world beginning to crack. He thought he was playing chess. He was about to discover he was playing high-stakes poker against a man who'd seen more bluffs than he'd had hot dinners. I spent the afternoon methodically cleaning up the garage, not because I needed to, but because routine brought clarity. Each tool returned to its proper place. Each drop of oil wiped clean was an act of focus, a calming ritual before the storm. My mind, meanwhile, was a whirlwind of probabilities and possibilities. I wasn't just reacting, I was strategizing. Rick's arrogance, his sense of entitlement, that was his primary weakness. He believed his money and status made him untouchable. But money, like power, is an illusion. It only works if people believe in it. And I knew exactly how to make people stop believing. Ghost. The name still sat in my flip phone's contacts, a digital relic of a past I thought was long buried. I hadn't spoken to him in nearly 20 years, not since Evelyn's passing. Back then, he was the guy you called when you needed things to disappear, or appear, or simply change. He operated in the gray areas, the shadows between the lines of legitimate business, a master of information, an architect of unseen consequences. His real name was probably something mundane, like Frank Johnson, but he was anything but mundane. He was a whisper, a rumor, a force. I dialed the number. 3 rings. Then a click. A raspy voice, dry as desert sand, answered. Yeah. Ghost, I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the apprehension I felt at pulling him back into my orbit. It's Arthur. Arthur Sterling. A long pause. The kind of pause that makes you wonder if the line has gone dead, or if the person on the other end is simply trying to reassemble a piece of their distant past. Art. The voice was slow, laced with surprise. Well, I'll be damned. The quiet life finally got too loud for you, huh? I thought you were still out there building houses, chasing squirrels. Haven't heard from you since Evelyn. It got loud, Ghost. Very loud. Trouble, he asked, the single word carrying a world of meaning. Ghost didn't deal in small talk. Family trouble. My son, he's made some unfortunate choices, and he's trying to take something that isn't his. Something important. I chose my words carefully. Ghost knew enough of my past to understand the implications of important. The truck, he guessed, surprising me. I always wondered about that truck. Evelyn was particular about it. The truck, yes. And the house. My home. He wants me out, and he thinks he can just take it. Ghost was silent for another moment, processing. Rich kid, huh? They always think they're untouchable. What do you need, Art? Old favors? New ones? Intel? All of the above. I need to know everything about Richard Sterling. Everything he thinks is private. Every deal, every partner, every secret. His fiancée, Melanie Thorne. Her background. Her family. I want to know where the bodies are buried. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Ghost chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Metaphorically, of course. I can do that, Art, but it's going to cost you. Old favors are good, but I've got a new generation of hackers and information brokers to feed. Cost isn't an issue, Ghost. Not anymore. This is deeply personal. I need absolute discretion. And speed. Speed is my middle name, Art. You'll have a preliminary dossier by morning. The deeper dives will take a few days. You still at the old number, old house. Still here, I confirmed. And thanks, Ghost. You won't regret it. Irrelido articul. And you know what? It's good to hear your voice. I always figured you had one more fight left in you. He hung up before I could respond. Ghost. The last piece of my old life, now re-engaged. With David handling the legal shield and Ghost digging up the skeletons, I felt a familiar, almost forgotten surge of purpose. The pieces were moving into place. 6 p.m. approached. The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. I sat on my porch, a book unread in my hands, waiting. I wasn't waiting for a confrontation. I was waiting for Rick to confirm his next move. I knew he wouldn't back down easily. Arrogance rarely does. A sleek, black SUV, not the Porsche, pulled up a little after 6. It was a new Mercedes, a luxury behemoth. Rick stepped out, not alone this time. Melanie, in a pristine white dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, was beside him, her arm linked through his. She looked annoyed, her perfectly sculpted face pinched with impatience. They both moved with an air of entitlement, as if the very air around them should part for their passage. Rick's eyes, as he looked at my house, were cold, calculating. There was no longer any pretense of family affection. This was pure power play. He saw the police cruiser slowly driving by at the end of the street, and his jaw tightened. David had been thorough. He walked towards the porch, Melanie trailing elegantly behind him, her heels clicking precisely on the asphalt. He stopped a few feet from me, his shoulders back, his chin jutting out. "So, the old man called the cops," he said, a sneer on his lips. "Didn't think you had it in you. But it won't matter, Dad. You're wasting your time. I'll get this house, one way or another." "You already have, Rick," I replied, my voice calm. "The legal system has made its decision. You cannot enter this property without my permission, and you certainly cannot remove me or my belongings. This is my home. You made your choice this morning." Melanie, bored with the legal nuances, interjected, "Honestly, Rick, can't we just buy him a nicer house? This place is a dump. And that truck, it's an eyesore." Her words were the final nail in the coffin of any remaining civility. They were directed at Rick, but intended for me, a casual dismissal of my entire existence. "It's not for sale, Melanie," I said, my gaze fixed on Rick. "And neither am I." Rick bristled. "Fine. You want to play hardball, Dad? We'll play hardball. You think you can stop me with a piece of paper? I'll bury you in litigation. I'll make sure you can't afford to live here. I'll make your life a living hell." He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "And your precious truck? Accidents happen, Dad, especially to old, uninsured vehicles parked out in the open." He let the threat hang in the air, a venomous promise. His eyes were cold, devoid of any familial warmth. He truly believed he could intimidate me, break me, force me to bend to his will. "You really want to play that game, Rick?" I asked, my own voice dropping, now laced with an edge of steel he wouldn't recognize. "Because I'm very, very good at it. And trust me, son, you do not want to know what happens when I stop being Dad and start being myself." He scoffed. "And what exactly is that, old man? A retired construction worker with a bad back? A widower clinging to his memories?" I just smiled, a slow, predatory smile that made the skin around my eyes crinkle in a way that wasn't entirely benign. "You'll find out soon enough, Rick. You'll find out exactly what happens when you try to take everything from a man who has nothing left to lose. And you'll find out that some secrets, once unearthed, can shatter entire lives. Your life, son, and your mother's." The mention of Evelyn, casual and yet loaded, visibly unsettled him. He recoiled slightly, a flicker of genuine confusion and perhaps fear in his eyes. He tried to brush it off, to dismiss my words as the ramblings of an old man. But the seed of doubt had been planted. He looked at me, then truly looked at me, and for a fleeting moment I saw a question in his gaze. "Who are you, really?" He turned abruptly, grabbing Melanie's arm. "Come on, Mel. This is pointless. We'll deal with this another way." They walked back to the Mercedes, Melanie casting a disdainful glance at my house. As Rick opened her door, he looked back at me one last time, his face a mask of furious determination. "You'll regret this, Dad," he yelled, his voice echoing in the twilight. "I promise you." "No, Rick," I replied, my voice carrying easily across the lawn, firm and clear. "You'll regret it. You already do. And it's only just begun." He slammed the door, got into the driver's seat, and peeled away, the screech of tires a violent punctuation marked to his departure. I leaned back in my chair, the twilight deepening around me. The calm, the stillness, it was deceptive. Beneath the surface, the machinery was humming, turning. Rick's visit had confirmed everything. His intent was malicious. His methods were ruthless. He wanted to destroy my quiet life. But he had no idea that my quiet life was a strategic retreat, a carefully constructed illusion. And the man he thought he was fighting? That man was merely a shadow. The real Art Sterling was just beginning to emerge from the long sleep. The war had officially begun, and I had a distinct advantage. I knew who I was. He had no idea who he was fighting. Not yet, but he would. Oh, he absolutely would. The next morning, the air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. A new day, a new phase of the conflict. Rick, in his opulent office high above the Philadelphia skyline, was undoubtedly seething, stewing in a concoction of legal frustration and wounded pride. He'd thrown his expensive coffee mug. He'd threatened property damage. He'd made it personal. And that, more than anything, was his biggest mistake. My preliminary dossier from Ghost arrived before my second cup of coffee. It wasn't a digital file or an email. It was a thick, unmarked manila envelope, left subtly on my porch swing by an unseen hand. Ghost was old school, and he understood the value of physical, untraceable information. Inside, the pages were neatly organized, each section typewritten in a crisp, sans serif font. No fingerprints, no watermarks, nothing that could trace back to its origin. Just raw, unadulterated data. I settled into my chair, the morning sun warming my face, and began to read. The first section was on Richard Sterling. His official bio was impressive. CEO of Sterling Innovations, a rapidly growing tech firm specializing in AI-driven financial analytics. Yale MBA, numerous awards, Forbes 30 Under 30, alumnus a few years back. The picture painted was of a self-made prodigy, a titan in the making. But beneath the glossy surface, Ghost had excavated the cracks. Rick's early investments were seeded by a substantial, untraceable inheritance, not from me, but from Evelyn. A sum so large, it defied explanation for a woman who lived a modest life. That money, Ghost notes hinted, had been channeled through a series of shell corporations and offshore accounts, skillfully laundered and then presented as angel investor capital. Rick had a knack for leveraging other people's money, a talent he apparently inherited from his mother, not from me. Then there were the deals. Sterling Innovations had a habit of acquiring smaller, innovative startups, often for pennies on the dollar, just before their groundbreaking technologies were about to be revealed. Ghost had flagged several instances where insider information seemed to play a suspiciously large role. Nothing concrete enough for a federal investigation, but enough to raise red flags, enough to suggest a pattern of aggressive acquisition. Or, as my old world would call it, sophisticated theft. His personal life was equally illuminating. A string of high-profile relationships, each woman a step up the social ladder. Melanie Thorne, his current fiancée, was the daughter of a prominent senator from Pennsylvania, a man with his own share of skeletons, particularly regarding certain land deals and lobbying efforts. Melanie herself was a trust fund baby with a penchant for luxury and a history of debt that her father quietly covered. She ran a boutique interior design firm that mostly decorated the homes of her parents' friends. Her ambition was mostly for status and an increased allowance. She was a trophy, and Rick was her latest, most polished pedestal. I paused, taking it all in. Rick was building an empire, not on sand, but on carefully laid foundations of others' unwitting contributions and his mother's hidden fortune. He was a shark, but a predictable one. He swam in circles, always chasing the next opportunity, always looking for an angle. He was good at it, I'll give him that. But he was also blind to the deeper currents, the ones that could pull him under. The most intriguing part was a short, encrypted note at the end of Rick's section. See Evelyn's Sterling file, specifically Project Chimera. Project Chimera. The words sent a cold shiver down my spine. That was the name I had given to the truth about Evelyn. The truth I had locked away in the F-100's hidden compartment. The truth I had vowed to never reveal. Ghost had clearly kept his own extensive files on my past life and on Evelyn's. He had known, or at least suspected, more than I had given him credit for. I turned to Evelyn's section. This was harder to read, a stab to the heart with every line. My beautiful, gentle Evelyn, the woman I had loved, the woman who had brought light into my dark world. But the pages before me spoke of a different Evelyn, an Evelyn who was a ghost in her own right, a master of deception. Before she met me, Evelyn May Thorne, her maiden name, not Melanie's, though a shared last name was a curious coincidence, had been a brilliant, ruthless operative, not for any government agency, but for a shadowy, clandestine organization that dealt in corporate espionage, political destabilization, and the quiet redirection of vast sums of wealth. They called themselves the Syndicate, a loose-knit collective of highly skilled individuals who believed in manipulating the world from the unseen. She was their best, known as the Weaver. Her specialty was creating intricate financial webs, untraceable money flows, and psychological profiles so precise she could predict entire market shifts based on the habits of key players. She could plant an idea, create a rumor, or orchestrate an entire scandal with the elegance of a master puppeteer. And she was utterly amoral, driven by a perverse intellectual thrill in watching her carefully constructed illusions take hold. The inheritance Rick received? It wasn't from a rich, distant relative. It was the payout from Evelyn's final, most ambitious operation for the Syndicate. An operation that went spectacularly wrong, leaving a trail of ruined lives and a multi-billion-dollar corporation in shambles. She had walked away with a king's ransom, but also with a price on her head. That was when she met me, Art Sterling, a man trying to escape his own violent past, building a new life as a quiet construction contractor. She had sought refuge, a place to disappear. I had offered her anonymity and a chance at a normal life. We fell in love, built this house, raised Rick. I knew she had a past, a dark one. She had confessed fragments, enough to warn me, to make me understand the stakes. But she never told me the full truth. Not about Project Chimera, not about the extent of her involvement, and definitely not about the coin. The coin. It was mentioned in her file, too. A single paragraph, stark and chilling. The Chimera coin. A failsafe. If ever discovered, it triggers a cascade. Irreversible. Consequences unknown. I closed the file, my hands trembling slightly. Evelyn, my Evelyn, had been the Weaver, a woman capable of such profound deception, such calculated ruthlessness, that she could orchestrate the collapse of an empire and walk away, leaving no trace. And she had passed on that inheritance, that blood money, to our son, Rick, not telling him its true origin, allowing him to build his empire on a foundation of stolen wealth and hidden sins. My son, the self-made millionaire, was simply an unwitting pawn in his mother's final, grand game. And the truck, Evelyn's F-100, was not just a symbol of our love, but the very vessel that carried the final, explosive truth. The coded journal in the compartment? It was Evelyn's personal ledger, detailing every step of Project Chimera, every player, every illicit transfer. And the coin was the ultimate key. He wanted to take my house. He wanted to discredit me. He wanted to sever our ties and rewrite our history. He had no idea he was about to discover a history so profound, so devastating, that it would shatter his entire reality. I stood up, walked to the garage, and stared at the F-100. It sat there, an unassuming old pickup, but now, knowing what it contained, it hummed with an almost palpable energy. It wasn't just a vehicle anymore. It was a time capsule, a Pandora's box, a silent witness to a life of secrets and lies. My son thought he was removing an old man from his home. He had, instead, awoken the ghost of his mother's past, and a dormant rage in his father that he couldn't possibly comprehend. He had kicked the anthill, and now the entire colony was swarming. The legal battle was just a smokescreen. The real battle was about to begin. It was about truth, and it would destroy everything he thought he knew. The weight of the revelations from Ghost's dossier settled over me like a shroud. Evelyn, the Weaver, Project Chimera, the sheer scale of her deception, the calculated coldness of it all, was a bitter pill. I had loved her fiercely, blindly, for decades. I had believed in her desire for a quiet, normal life, just as I had longed for it myself. But beneath the surface, a master manipulator had been at work, even in death, setting the stage for a grand finale that would shake Rick's world to its foundations. And by extension mine, my initial anger at Rick began to morph, twisting into something more complex. Pity, perhaps, for a son so thoroughly blinded by his own ambition and his mother's legacy that he couldn't see the impending avalanche. But pity was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not now. Not when he threatened everything I had built, everything I had protected. My focus sharpened. It wasn't just about protecting my home anymore. It was about justice, about exposing the truth, even if that truth was ugly and painful. Evelyn had created this intricate web, and now it was my grim duty to untangle it, to let the chips fall where they may. Rick had unknowingly triggered the fail-safe. And I, Arthur Sterling, the quiet contractor, was now the reluctant executor of Project Chimera. The next few days were a blur of meticulous preparation. While Rick's legal team was undoubtedly scrambling to counter David's restraining order, I was operating on a different plane entirely. I put my construction skills to use, but not for building, for disassembling. First, the F-100. I needed to extract the contents of the hidden compartment, not just for safekeeping, but for analysis. Under the guise of working on the engine, I spent hours in the garage, carefully removing panels, bypassing traps Evelyn had built into the truck's very frame, traps designed to protect her secrets. She was thorough, I'll give her that. It took me a full day just to reach the compartment without triggering any alarms or destroying the invaluable contents. Inside, the leather-bound journal was exactly as Ghost's file described. Evelyn's meticulous, coded script. Her personal ledger of Project Chimera. It was a treasure trove of information, detailing shell companies' offshore accounts, names of key players in the syndicate, their weaknesses, their alliances, their illicit dealings. The original inheritance for Rick was outlined here, showing how it was laundered through a series of ghost companies, designed to look like legitimate investments that just happened to pay out at precisely the right time for a young, ambitious entrepreneur. And then there was the coin. The Chimera coin. It was small, heavy, made of an unusual, dull, gray metal, expertly crafted. On one side, a mythical creature, half lion, half eagle, with a serpent's tail. On the other, a series of concentric circles, etched with what looked like ancient, undecipherable symbols. It was more than just a key. It was a physical representation of Evelyn's ultimate contingency, a last act of defiance, or perhaps a twisted form of justice. I also found a small, unmarked USB drive, cleverly disguised as a simple screw, tucked into the journal's spine. Knowing Evelyn, it would contain something equally explosive. And knowing her, it would be heavily encrypted. My old contacts, the ones I hadn't called in decades, began to hear from me. Not the builders, but the other professionals. Men and women who specialized in information, in security, in getting things done outside the conventional channels. They remembered Art Sterling, the quiet one, the one who always had a plan, the one you didn't cross. I needed an encryption specialist, someone who could crack Evelyn's code. My mind went to a woman named Anya Petrova, a brilliant, eccentric cryptographer I'd worked with once long ago on a complex security system for a diplomat. She was notorious for her disdain for authority and her unparalleled skill. Ghost, of course, still had her number. Anya lived a reclusive life in a cabin deep in the Redwood National Park, surrounded by servers and satellite dishes. She answered on the first ring, her voice raspy, impatient. "Who is this? You're calling a non-existent number." "Oh no, it's Arthur. Arthur Sterling." Another pause, much like Ghost's. "Art, my God, I thought you were dead or living in a monastery. You finally decided to rejoin the human race." Something like that. "I have a puzzle for you. Your particular talents are required." "A puzzle, huh? From you, Art, that means it's either going to make me rich or get me killed. Or both. What's the catch? It belonged to Evelyn, and it concerns my son. Potentially a lot of very powerful people. Her voice went quiet, serious. Evelyn? The Weaver? You're not kidding, are you? That woman was a legend. Fine. Send it. But if it's what I think it is, my price just tripled. Consider it paid, I replied, and arranged for a secure, untraceable delivery of the USB drive. While Anya was working on Evelyn's digital secrets, I began to study the journal. Evelyn's coded language was intricate, a blend of financial jargon, historical references, and personal shorthand. But I knew her mind better than anyone. It was like learning to read her handwriting again, painstakingly deciphering each entry. Slowly, a horrifying picture began to emerge. Project Chimera wasn't just an operation. It was a legacy, a calculated, long-term manipulation of the global financial system, orchestrated by the syndicate, with Evelyn at its very core. The goal? To create a series of untraceable, interlocking financial instruments that could be triggered by a single event, causing a domino effect that would destabilize entire economies for profit. Rick's inheritance was merely a tiny, untraceable seed from this larger, more sinister garden. The ultimate trigger, the fail-safe, was the Chimera coin itself. The coin wasn't just a symbol. It was a highly sophisticated key. Embedded within its metallic structure were microscopic circuits, encoded with a unique identifier. Placing it in a specific secret device would activate a chain of events, releasing encrypted data, triggering financial transactions, and revealing the true orchestrators of the entire scheme. It was Evelyn's ultimate act of revenge, or perhaps her final insurance policy against the syndicate turning on her. A suicide switch, designed to take down her enemies with her. And Rick, in his desperate attempt to kick me out of my house and take my truck, had unknowingly put himself in the crosshairs of this ancient, silent war. He was an heir to a legacy of financial terrorism, a direct beneficiary of Evelyn's final, most dangerous scheme. And the Chimera coin, the key to its activation, was now in my possession. I felt a profound shift within me. I was no longer merely Art Sterling, the retired contractor. I was Arthur Sterling, the man who had loved Evelyn, who had tried to build a normal life, and who was now forced to confront the darkest parts of her past and his own. My quiet life had been shattered, and now I had to choose. Let Rick stumble blindly into this abyss, or reveal the truth, knowing it would destroy him, his mother's memory, and perhaps even me. The answer, when it came, was cold and clear. Justice, not just for me, but for the countless others Evelyn had unknowingly harmed with her manipulations. Rick had to know. The world had to know. Anya's call came 3 days later. Her voice was taut with a mixture of excitement and dread. Art, you won't believe what I found on that drive. Evelyn, she was a genius. And a monster. This isn't just about some corporate espionage. This is global. The Chimera coin, Art. It's real. And the drive contains the coordinates of the activation device. And the full manifest of who stands to gain and who stands to lose when it's triggered. And the consequences? I asked, my voice steady, though my heart pounded a relentless rhythm against my ribs. Chaos, Art. Pure, unadulterated chaos. A financial tsunami. The kind that reshapes continents. This isn't just a threat. It's an extinction-level event for the global economy. Evelyn wasn't just playing games. She was building a doomsday device. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the Chimera coin, glinting innocently in my palm. My son, in his foolish arrogance, had not just disturbed a sleeping giant. He had unknowingly unearthed a weapon of mass destruction. And now, I was the only one who could decide whether to use it or to defuse it. My quiet life was over. The game had escalated beyond houses and trucks, beyond personal vendettas. It was now about the fate of an unwitting world and the dark legacy of the woman I had loved. My son had demanded I empty my house. Now, I would empty his world, and it would be a reckoning. The weight of the Chimera coin in my hand felt suddenly heavier, a cold, metallic truth in my palm. Anya's words echoed in my mind. chaos. Pure, unadulterated chaos. A financial tsunami. My son, in his petty greed, had inadvertently pulled me into a situation far grander, far more terrifying than a dispute over a house and a truck. He had, with his casual dismissal of my life, set in motion the uncovering of a global financial doomsday device. My rage at Rick, the petulant, entitled millionaire, was now tempered by a chilling sense of responsibility. This wasn't just about personal revenge anymore. This was about Evelyn's legacy, a legacy that threatened to engulf the innocent along with the guilty. I had to stop it. And to stop it, I had to understand it fully, dissect every layer of Evelyn's labyrinthine design. I arranged for another secure transfer with Anya. The full, decrypted contents of a USB drive and Evelyn's journal needed to be cross-referenced, analyzed with every resource Anya had. She was the best, but even she would need time and space undisturbed. Her cabin in the Redwoods became an unlikely command center, while my unassuming colonial house remained a silent vortex, drawing in the threads of a dangerous global conspiracy. Meanwhile, Rick was busy making my life a living hell, as he'd promised. His legal team, a phalanx of sharp-suited sharks, filed a motion to vacate the restraining order, claiming I was unstable, elderly, and prone to delusions of grandeur. They even tried to paint me as an abusive father, using the incident in my driveway as evidence of my violent tendencies. It was a vicious, calculated attack designed to portray me as a senile old man who needed to be institutionalized for his own good. David, my quiet, tweed-clad lawyer, was incandescent with controlled fury. Arthur, this is truly despicable. They're trying to delegitimize you, to make you appear incompetent. It's a standard tactic to force a vulnerable party into a conservatorship. I know, David, I replied, my voice calm. Let them underestimate me. It's a mistake they won't recover from. David, though concerned, knew better than to question my resolve. He had seen the extreme circumstances file. He understood there were depths to Art Sterling he couldn't comprehend. I'll counter their motions, Arthur. We'll paint a clear picture of elder abuse and attempted coercion. Their claims are baseless, and I have witnesses to your character from decades of community work. But it will be a fight. Good, I said. A fight is exactly what I need. It keeps me sharp. Just make sure nothing, absolutely nothing, they throw at us affects the truck or the house. Those are non-negotiable. Understood. David confirmed, his tone grim. I wasn't just waiting for Anya. I was actively probing. Ghost provided daily updates, not just on Rick and Melanie, but on the senator, Melanie's father, Edward Thorne. It turned out Senator Thorne was deeply entangled in various development projects, with Sterling Innovations often emerging as a key beneficiary. Kickbacks, land rezoning, insider trading, the usual sordid dance between power and money. Rick wasn't just Evelyn's inheritor. He was a willing participant in a new, albeit smaller, web of corruption. And then there was the syndicate. Ghost, with his network, managed to identify a few key players mentioned in Evelyn's less-coded notes. These weren't petty criminals. These were financiers, politicians, intelligence operatives. Powerful people who valued discretion above all else. People who, if their connection to Project Chimera was revealed, would suffer catastrophic losses, not just of wealth, but of freedom, reputation, and perhaps even life. One name stood out, Marcus Vance, a revered financial guru, former Treasury advisor, now head of a philanthropic foundation. Clean as a whistle on the surface, but Evelyn's journal hinted at him as the true puppet master behind the syndicate, the strategic mind. He was the one who initially conceived of Project Chimera, and Evelyn was merely his chief architect. The thought sent a chill down my spine. The stakes just quadrupled. Rick's arrogance was a shield, but also a beacon. He kept pushing, kept escalating. He knew the TRO prevented him from entering my property, but he found other ways to harass me. He sent contractors to inspect the house's foundation, code enforcement officers to cite me for minor infractions, a loose shutter, an overgrown bush, and even tried to cut off my utilities, claiming a paperwork error. Each attempt was swiftly countered by David, but it served its purpose to remind me that he was always there, always pushing. He wants to wear you down, Art, David advised. He wants you to capitulate out of exhaustion. He's wasting his time, I replied, watching a new, unfamiliar sedan drive slowly past my house, its tinted windows concealing whoever was inside. He's fighting a shadow. The calls from Anya grew more intense, more urgent. She had broken through Evelyn's deepest layers of encryption. The USB drive contained not just the coordinates of the activation device, but a full, terrifyingly detailed blueprint of Project Chimera. It was a self-replicating algorithm, a financial virus designed to exploit weaknesses in the global stock exchanges, bond markets, and banking systems. Once activated by the Chimera coin, it would trigger a cascading series of trades, bankruptcies, and currency devaluations. The goal was to siphon trillions into untraceable offshore accounts, primarily benefiting the syndicate, while simultaneously destabilizing political rivals and crushing entire economies. Art, Anya had said, her voice strained, this isn't just about money. This is about power, about rewriting the world order. The activation device, it's hidden in plain sight, in a sub-basement beneath the old Philadelphia Bank building, the one that was supposedly decommissioned years ago, but is actually a highly secure data center. It's a vault, Art, and the coin is the only key. The old Philadelphia Bank, a historic landmark right in the heart of the city. I knew that building. Evelyn had helped design some of the security systems for its supposed decommissioning years ago, a job I had innocently believed was legitimate. She had been laying the groundwork even then. The weight of my purpose became crystal clear. Rick was a distraction. Senator Thorne and Melanie were side players. The real threat was Marcus Vance and the syndicate, and the Chimera device. I looked at the Chimera coin again. It was the only physical key. The USB drive and Evelyn's journal held the blueprints and the knowledge. But the coin was the trigger. If I activated it, I would unleash a global catastrophe. If I destroyed it, I would cut the head off Evelyn's monster, but I would also lose the leverage needed to expose the syndicate. This was no longer a simple family dispute. This was a moral dilemma of epic proportions. How much destruction was I willing to risk to expose the truth? How many lives was I willing to allow Evelyn's legacy to shatter, to bring down the powerful? I made my decision, a cold, hard knot forming in my gut. I would not activate the device, but I would use the threat of its activation to expose every last one of them. Rick, Melanie, Senator Thorne, Marcus Vance, the syndicate. All of them. My construction skills weren't just for building houses. They were for infiltration, for disassembly, for making things appear and disappear. I still knew the layouts of half the old buildings in Philadelphia, the forgotten tunnels, their weaknesses. I still had contacts who could provide me with access, with tools, with silent passage. I called Ghost again. Ghost. I need a ghost. For me. And for one other person. Tonight. Tonight? Things are moving fast, Art. Where? The old Philadelphia Bank. The sub-basement. I need eyes and ears. I need a way in. And I need a way out. Undetected. And I need to bring someone with me. Someone who will witness everything. Witness. Ghost paused. That's a bold move, Art. Who? Rick, I said, my voice grim. My son. He needs to see his mother's legacy firsthand. He needs to see the truth of what he's inherited. He needs to understand what he's unknowingly unleashed. And he needs to be the one to decide the ultimate fate of Project Chimera. Ghost was silent for a long moment. That's poetic, Art, and incredibly dangerous. But I like it. Consider it done. But you call the shots. You're the one going in. I'll just open the doors. Understood, I said. And one last thing, Ghost. I need a secure, anonymous channel to the Department of Justice and the International Financial Watchdogs. For a large data drop, should things go sideways. Always thinking ahead, Art. I'll have it ready. This is going to be quite the show. I hung up, the words quite the show echoing in my mind. Rick wanted me out of his life? Fine. I would give him an exit so spectacular, so profoundly shocking, that would redefine his entire existence. He wanted my house. I was about to give him the keys to his own undoing. And it would all begin tonight in the cold, forgotten depths of the old Philadelphia Bank. The night air in downtown Philadelphia felt different, charged with a simmering anticipation. The historic buildings, usually stoic and silent, seemed to hum with unseen energy. I stood across the street from the old Philadelphia Bank, a monolithic structure of granite and steel, its neoclassical facade bathed in the cold glow of streetlights. It looked like any other venerable institution, a symbol of stability and trust. But I knew better. Beneath its foundations lay a ticking time bomb. My mind raced, reviewing every detail of Evelyn's blueprints, every whisper from Anya, every logistical possibility from Ghost. This wasn't just about getting in. It was about controlling the narrative, ensuring the truth came out, and forcing Rick to confront the monstrosity his mother had created. And he would do it, willingly or unwillingly. "You ready, Art?" Ghost's voice crackled through the secure comm link I wore, a tiny earpiece expertly molded to my ear. He was nearby, a ghost in the machine, orchestrating my entry. "As I'll ever be," I murmured, my gaze fixed on the bank's main entrance. "Where's Rick?" "He's heading your way." Ghost confirmed, his tone dry. "Just left Senator Thorne's fundraiser. Still reeking of champagne and self-importance." I put a little detour in his GPS. He thinks he's going to a late-night meeting with one of his partners. Conveniently, it's just around the corner from the bank. And his car just developed a flat tire that only you can fix it. A faint smile touched my lips. Ghost's work was always elegant in its simplicity. Rick, stranded, will be vulnerable, and I would be his unlikely savior. I positioned myself near a dark alleyway, a forgotten corner where shadows clung thickest. My attire was unassuming. A dark work jacket, jeans, heavy boots. The kind of clothes that blended into the urban night, neither drawing attention nor suggesting anything out of the ordinary. In my pocket, the Chimera coin felt like a burning coal, its power waiting to be unleashed. Sure enough, a few minutes later, the unmistakable whine of a luxury electric car approached. Rick's Mercedes, the very same one he'd driven away in from my house, glided to a halt just past the bank, its hazard lights blinking. Rick got out, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the gritty urban landscape. He looked agitated, phone pressed to his ear, probably yelling at his assistant about the malfunctioning tire. I walked slowly towards him, my steps deliberate, soundless. He didn't notice me until I was just a few feet away. "Everything all right, son?" I asked, my voice calm, almost sympathetic. Rick whirled around, his eyes wide with surprise, then narrowed in immediate suspicion. "Dad, what are you doing here? How did you—" "I told you to stay away." His voice was a harsh whisper, laced with frustration. "Just taking a stroll," I lied smoothly. "Saw you were having some trouble. Thought I might offer a hand." He scoffed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Don't play innocent, old man. This is your doing, isn't it? Another one of your petty stunts." He kicked the tire, his shoes scuffing the expensive rubber. "No, wait. You wouldn't know how to do this. You're trying to prove a point, aren't you? Trying to make me look foolish." "Perhaps," I said, a subtle shift in my tone. "Or perhaps you're about to learn a very important lesson. About consequences. And about your mother." The last words hit him like a physical blow. His face, already pale from anger, drained of all color. "My mother? What are you talking about? Leave Mom out of this." "I wish I could, Rick. But she's at the very heart of it. Everything you've built, everything you think you are, it all stems from her. From her secrets. From Project Chimera." His eyes widened further. He took a step back, visibly unnerved. "Project what? What are you rambling about? You're losing it, old man." I knew it. This is exactly what I told David. You need help. No, Rick. You need help. And tonight you're going to get it. A painful, but necessary dose of reality. I gestured towards the imposing facade of the old Philadelphia Bank. "You see that building, son? Your mother knew it intimately. And tonight, we're going to pay it a visit. Together." He stared at me, then at the bank, then back at me, a mixture of disbelief and fear flickering in his eyes. "Are you insane? I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm calling the police." He fumbled for his phone. "Go ahead," I said, my voice unwavering. "But I assure you, by the time they arrive, you'll wish you had listened. Or, you can come with me and finally understand the truth of your inheritance. The truth of who Evelyn Sterling really was. The truth that could unravel your entire life and the lives of many, many others. This isn't a choice, Rick. It's an ultimatum. Your mother made sure of that. He hesitated, his gaze fixed on my face, searching for a sign of a bluff. He found none, just cold, unwavering resolve. The ghost of the man he'd known and forgotten was standing before him. "What if I say no?" he whispered, his bravado finally crumbling. "Then I walk away," I replied, showing him the Chimera coin, letting it catch the streetlight. "And I give this to the authorities, along with Evelyn's journal and the decrypted files from her USB drive. Everything, all of it. Project Chimera, the syndicate, Marcus Vance, Senator Thorne, your precious Sterling innovations, all of it exposed. And the consequences will be far more devastating than you can possibly imagine. Your choice, son. Come with me and understand. Or refuse and watch your world burn from the outside." He swallowed hard, his eyes glued to the coin. He was beginning to grasp the magnitude of what I was offering. The stakes. His entire empire, built on sand, threatened with imminent collapse. What do you want from me?" he finally asked, his voice barely audible. "The truth, Rick. For both of us. And a choice. A choice that only you can make. The choice of what to do with your mother's legacy." He looked utterly defeated, the arrogant veneer completely stripped away. He nodded slowly, reluctantly. "Fine," he choked out. "Just, what is this Project Chimera?" "You'll see," I said, a grim satisfaction in my voice. "Come on." I led him into the narrow alley beside the bank, where a maintenance door, usually locked, stood ajar by a hair. Ghost touch. The air inside was cold and stale, smelling of dust and old concrete. We descended a forgotten stairwell, deeper and deeper into the bowels of the building, the sounds of the city fading above us. Rick stumbled once, his expensive shoes ill-suited for the uneven steps. He was out of his element, vulnerable, exposed. Exactly where I wanted him. Finally, we reached a heavy steel door, marked with faded, industrial numbers. This was it. The entrance to Evelyn's secret. "This is where your mother did her best work, Rick," I said, my voice echoing in the confined space. "And where you will finally understand the true nature of your inheritance." With a silent nod to the unseen ghost, the heavy door groaned open, revealing a short, dark corridor leading to another, even more imposing vault door. This one was a relic of another era, a massive circular safe door, thick as a tank, its combination lock gleaming. But beside it, barely visible, was a small modern biometric scanner, and a tiny, almost invisible slot. "The Chimera device," I said, pointing to the slot. "And the coin is the key. Are you ready, son? Ready to face the truth of who your mother really was? And who you are, because of her?" Rick looked at me, then at the vault, then at the coin in my hand. His face was a mixture of terror, anger, and a dawning, terrible understanding. He was no longer the arrogant millionaire. He was just a boy, confronted with a legacy he couldn't possibly comprehend. And he was about to step into a world that would change him forever, or destroy him. Rick stared at the vault door, then at the Chimera coin glinting in my hand, his face a canvas of disbelief and dawning horror. The cool, stale air of the sub-basement seemed to thicken, pressing in on us. The faint hum of unseen machinery was the only sound, a sinister lullaby. You're not serious," he stammered, his voice thin, high-pitched. "This is a joke. Some kind of elaborate revenge, isn't it? My mother, she would never. Wouldn't she, Rick?" I cut him off, my voice sharp, unforgiving. "You never knew your mother." "Not really. You knew the carefully constructed facade, the loving wife, the doting mother, the quiet homemaker. I knew that woman too. I love that woman. But there was another side, a side she kept hidden, even from me, until it was too late. A side that built this." I gestured to the vault. He swallowed hard, his eyes darting frantically between me and the ominous steel door. "What do you want me to do?" "You're going to see it," I replied, my voice calm, but with an underlying current of steel. "All of it." And then you're going to make a choice. A choice about what to do with your mother's legacy. Because whether you like it or not, you are a part of it now. By birth, and by the actions you took this morning. I pressed the Chimera coin into his palm. It felt unnaturally heavy, a burden of truth. His fingers curled around it, almost involuntarily. He looked at the coin, then at the tiny slot next to the biometric scanner. Ghost, I murmured into my comm link. Ready. Doors are locked. Alarm all fine. Motion sensors dormant. You have exactly 30 minutes from the moment that coin is inserted before my override times out. You understand, Art? 30 minutes. Then the cavalry arrives. Your call. Understood. I confirmed. I looked at Rick. When that coin goes in, there's no turning back. Your world, and perhaps the world beyond these walls, will be irrevocably changed. Are you ready to know the truth, son? The real truth. He hesitated, his gaze fixed on the coin. I could see the battle waging within him. The desire to deny, to escape, to cling to his carefully curated reality, clashing with an undeniable, primal urge to know. The curiosity of a man whose entire life had been built on information, even if that information was a lie. Finally, with a deep, shaky breath, he nodded. Do it. His voice was barely a whisper. I nodded back. No, you do it. This is your inheritance, Rick. Your mother's final act. You need to be the one to activate it. He looked at me, a flicker of defiance, then resignation. He raised the coin, his hand trembling slightly, and slid it into the slot. A soft, almost imperceptible click echoed in the silence. Then, a low, resonant hum began to emanate from within the vault. The biometric scanner glowed green, then red, then green again, before settling on a steady azure light. A series of soft mechanical thumps and whirs followed as massive bolts disengaged. The vault door, ancient and formidable, slowly, majestically, began to swing inward, revealing the darkness beyond. The air that rushed out was colder, drier, smelling of ozone and circuitry. I reached around Rick and flipped a switch on the wall. Fluorescent lights flickered to life, bathing the room in a harsh, sterile glow. Rick gasped. It wasn't a vault filled with gold bars or stacks of cash. It was a server room. Not just any server room, but a fortress of technology. Rows upon rows of gleaming black servers, humming with an almost sentient energy, filled the expansive space. Cables snaked across the floor like digital veins, converging into massive fiber-optic trunks that disappeared into the ceiling. Banks of monitors glowed with endless lines of code, scrolling data, and complex algorithmic equations. In the center of the room, encased in a transparent, reinforced glass cylinder, was a single, elegant pedestal. On the pedestal, the Chimera coin, now glowing with a faint, internal light, was firmly seated. It was the heart of the machine, the activation device itself. What is this? Rick whispered, his voice choked with awe and terror. He stepped forward, drawn by the sheer scale of it all, his eyes wide, frantically trying to process the impossible. This, Rick, I said, following him, my voice low and grim, is Project Chimera, your mother's final masterpiece, and the true source of your inheritance stock. He walked past the servers, his hand trailing over the cool metal, as if unable to believe his eyes. But what does it do? I walked to a main console, a sleek touchscreen display that was mercifully unencrypted. Anya had briefed me on its basic functions. I tapped a few commands. Instantly, the monitors around the room changed, displaying intricate diagrams, flowcharts, and financial models. It's a global financial weapon, I explained, my voice flat. Designed by your mother, Evelyn Sterling, codenamed the Weaver for the Syndicate. It's an algorithm, a self-replicating, self-correcting financial virus. Once fully activated, it will exploit every vulnerability in the world's stock markets, bond markets, currency exchanges, and banking systems. It will trigger a cascade of trades, bankruptcies, and devaluations. Trillions will be siphoned untraceably into offshore accounts controlled by the Syndicate. And in its wake, it will leave economic collapse, global instability, chaos. Rick just stared, his mouth slightly agape, a faint tremor running through him. No, no, that's impossible. My mother she was a homemaker, a kind woman. She baked cookies. She also designed this, I said, pointing to a diagram on the main screen showing a complex web of financial transactions spanning continents. And the inheritance you received, the seed money for Sterling Innovations? It was a small, untraceable payout from one of her early syndicate operations. Blood money, Rick. Every dollar you've built your empire on, every accolade you've received, every deal you've closed, it all started with this. With her. I pulled out Evelyn's journal. Its worn leather a stark contrast to the gleaming technology around us. This is her ledger, her notes, her meticulous plans. Every step of Project Chimera is laid out here. The names of the syndicate members, including Marcus Vance, the philanthropist, the Senator Melanie's father, who helped create the political environment for these schemes. Your mother didn't just bake cookies, Rick. She baked financial bombs. Rick's eyes scanned the journal, then darted to the screen, then back to the coin, still glowing faintly in its pedestal. He saw his own company's logo flash on one of the secondary monitors, highlighted as a beneficiary of a suspiciously timed market fluctuation. His carefully constructed reality was crumbling before his eyes. So, this is what she truly left me, he whispered, his voice hoarse, raw with a mixture of betrayal and shame. This weapon, this destruction, this is the truth, Rick. And now, you have a choice. This device is currently in standby mode. But if that coin remains in its slot, or if someone else inserts their own unique key, it will fully activate. The countdown will begin. Chaos will ensue. The syndicate will profit. And you, as the direct heir to Evelyn's legacy, will be implicated. A patsy or a willing participant. It will make no difference to the world. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. Or you can stop it. The system has a built-in fail-safe, Evelyn's final bit of twisted genius. A way to shut it down permanently and erase all traces of its existence from the global network. But it requires a sacrifice, a complete and utter destruction of all data related to Project Chimera, including the records of the syndicate, the beneficiaries, and the untraceable funds that seeded your company, Rick. Every cent. It will expose them, yes, but it will also expose the fraudulent foundation of your empire. You will lose everything you think you built. Your wealth, your status, your company, all gone. And you'll be the one to do it. I looked him straight in the eye, my gaze unwavering. Your mother gave you this choice, Rick. Unwittingly, perhaps. But here it is. Do you let her legacy of destruction unfold and try to cling to your ill-gotten gains? Or do you sacrifice everything to do what's right, to undo the damage she wrought, and ensure the innocent don't pay the price for her sins? The Chimera coin is in your hands, son. The choice is yours. What will it be? The silence in the vault was deafening, broken only by the hum of the servers and the frantic pounding of Rick's heart. He stood there, frozen, caught between two impossible realities. The arrogant millionaire had vanished, replaced by a terrified, broken man. His future, his identity, the fate of countless lives, all hinged on his decision. And the clock was ticking. Rick stood frozen, the harsh fluorescent light of the vault reflecting in his wide, disbelieving eyes. His perfectly tailored suit, once a symbol of his power, now seemed like a fragile shell. The silence was punctuated only by the rhythmic hum of the servers, a pulse of latent destruction. I watched him, searching for any sign of the boy I once knew, the one who wasn't yet consumed by ambition and entitlement. Everything I've built, he whispered, his voice cracking, the words tasting like ash. Sterling Innovations, it's all a lie. A lie built on a lie, Rick, I affirmed, my voice devoid of judgment, only cold, hard fact. Your mother's genius was in creating these elaborate financial illusions. She gave you the seed, and you cultivated the garden. But the roots are poisoned. This isn't just about money, son. This is about ethical debt, about the consequences of unchecked power, and about choosing between self-preservation and global catastrophe. His gaze drifted to the monitors, with a complex algorithms still scrolled, displaying the potential for ruin. He saw his own company's name, not as a pinnacle of innovation, but as a component in a far larger, far more sinister design. He saw the face of Marcus Vance, the philanthropic titan, flicker on a screen, identified as the architect of this global scam. He saw Senator Thorne, Melanie's father, implicitly linked to the shadowy network. The scale of the deception, the depth of his unwitting involvement, was beginning to sink in. Melanie, he breathed, the realization washing over him. Her father, he's involved? Is she? Melanie is largely irrelevant, Rick. I cut in, my voice softer, recognizing the genuine pain in his eyes. A useful accessory to her father and to you. Her father, however, is deeply compromised. He's been feeding the syndicate legislative loopholes and inside information for years. He's an enabler, a facilitator of this entire operation. His head dropped, his shoulders slumping. The weight of his mother's legacy, a legacy he'd so proudly embraced, was crushing him. The man who had just yesterday physically assaulted me for a truck now looked utterly broken. So, what's the choice? He finally asked, lifting his head, his eyes hollow. To activate this thing? And become a part of her monster? Or to destroy everything I have, everything I thought I was, and expose them all? Yes, I confirmed. And to accept the consequences of that choice. If you destroy it, you will lose your company. You will lose your fortune. You will face intense scrutiny, perhaps even charges, though I will ensure that your unwitting involvement is clearly documented. But you will have saved countless lives, prevented untold economic hardship, and perhaps redeemed your mother's soul in some small, twisted way. You will have chosen justice over greed, and you will walk away with nothing but your integrity, a very rare currency in your world. I watched him, giving him space, giving him time. This was his crucible, his moment of truth. He had always been so eager to take, to acquire, to conquer. Now, he had to choose to surrender, to dismantle, to sacrifice. It was the antithesis of everything he believed in, everything he had been taught. The seconds stretched into an eternity. The hum of the servers filled the void, a silent countdown. Rick closed his eyes, his fists clenching and unclenching. I saw the struggle, the sheer agony of confronting such a devastating truth. He was seeing his entire life unravel, piece by excruciating piece. Then he opened his eyes. They were still raw, still filled with pain, but there was something else there now. A flicker of something real, a dawning comprehension, perhaps, of the true cost of his ambition. A sliver of the old Rick, the boy who used to build sandcastles on the beach and protect them with fierce, childish loyalty. "Show me," he said, his voice stronger now, though still hoarse. "Show me how to shut it down. Show me how to undo this." A wave of relief, so profound it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. He had chosen. He had chosen the harder path. "Good choice, son," I said, a rare warmth entering my voice. The right choice. I walked him through the shutdown sequence. It was elegantly designed, another testament to Evelyn's genius. A series of complex commands, specific biometric authentications, and a final, irreversible sequence that would trigger a global data wipe of all Project Chimera files, rendering the system inert and exposing the syndicate members by linking their past, untraceable transactions to their current, legitimate holdings. It would be a financial earthquake, but a controlled one. Rick's hands, guided by my instructions, moved across the console. His fingers, accustomed to navigating complex financial dashboards, worked with a newfound precision, a grim determination. He entered the codes, confirmed the biometrics, his face a mask of concentration. Each tap of his finger was a step towards dismantling his own empire. As he entered the final command, a single word flashed across the screen. Confirm. Destruction of Chimera. Irreversible. Activate failsafe. He looked at me, a silent question in his eyes. I simply nodded. "This is your legacy now, Rick. Not hers. Yours." With a deep breath, he pressed yes. The humming of the servers intensified for a moment, then slowly began to wind down. The scrolling code on the monitors froze, then dissolved into static, replaced by a single, stark message. Chimera system offline. Data purge initiated. Traceability activated. The Chimera coin, still in its pedestal, lost its faint glow, becoming dull and lifeless once more. The room grew quieter, colder, as if the very air had lost its sinister charge. Rick stood there, his hands still hovering over the console, his chest heaving. He looked around the now-silent vault, at the dormant servers, the blank screens. The monster was gone, and so, too, was his illusion of a life. "It's done," he whispered, the words barely audible. "It's all gone." "Not all of it," I corrected, walking over to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You still have yourself, Rick. And now, you have a choice to make about what kind of man you want to be. The man who takes, or the man who cleans up the mess." What happens now?" he asked, his eyes still distant, unfocused. "The failsafe Evelyn designed isn't just a data wipe," I explained. "It's also a data dump. Anya, my associate, is setting up an anonymous release of the exposed syndicate information to the Department of Justice and international financial regulatory bodies right now. Marcus Vance, Senator Thorne, and the rest of them, their lives are about to get very, very complicated. They'll face investigations, indictments, ruin. Justice, of a kind, will be served. "And me?" he asked, his voice filled with dread. "You will face questions," I said frankly. "Your company, Sterling Innovations, will be thoroughly investigated. The origins of its initial capital will be exposed. It will likely collapse. You will lose your fortune. Your reputation will be in tatters. Melanie will undoubtedly leave you, and her father will disown you. But you will have a chance, a difficult, painful chance to rebuild, to redefine yourself, to live a life of integrity rather than illusion." He looked at me, truly looked at me, for the first time in years. The arrogant mask was gone, replaced by vulnerability. "And you, Dad?" "Me?" I smiled, a genuine, tired smile. "I go back to my quiet life, to my house, to my truck, and I finish what I started. Knowing that I've honored your mother's memory in the only way I truly could, by dismantling the darkest part of her legacy, and by giving you a chance to be better than she was, and better than you were. We need to get out of here." Ghost's voice crackled through my comm link, urgency in his tone. "The 30 minutes are almost up. Police are en route, responding to an anonymous tip about suspicious activity at the bank. My override is failing." "Understood," I replied. "Come on, Rick. Time to face the music." I led him back through the vault door, which slowly began to swing shut behind us, sealing away the silent, dormant servers, the ghost of Project Chimera. We ascended the stairs, the cold air giving way to the faint sounds of the city once more. As we emerged from the alleyway, the flashing blue and red lights of multiple police cruisers illuminated the street. Officers, weapons drawn, were converging on the bank. Rick flinched, but I placed a steadying hand on his back. "This is it, son," I said, my voice low. "The beginning of your new life, and the end of your old one." We walked towards the officers, our hands raised in a gesture of surrender. Rick, the self-made millionaire, now stripped of his illusions, was about to face the consequences of his actions and the profound, devastating truth of his mother's legacy. He had lost everything, but in doing so, he had gained something far more valuable, a chance at redemption. And I, Arthur Sterling, the quiet contractor, had finally completed my last, most dangerous mission. The war was over, and a new, uncertain peace was about to begin.